I think we can start. It's 4 p.m. Nigerian time. So welcome everyone to the September webinar series right out of Ivan Research Institute, Nigeria. And we're speaking to you live from Enugu in Southeast Nigeria. I want to welcome everyone this month to the webinar. And we have a very interesting webinar today. We're going to be talking about how we can share our data. So we're going to go beyond the traditional ways that we know about sharing data and do things that are innovative. And so I'd like to, first of all, introduce our guest speaker. Dr. Bernard Appiah is a pharmacist who's now turned to be a science journalist, and he's also a public health scholar. He has a master's in science and technology in journalism and a doctorate in public health from Texas A&M University in the United States. He's currently an assistant professor at Syracuse University's Department of Public Health, where he leverages culturally sensitive storytelling and media, ranging from radio dramas to cartoons, to promote health literacy. He is widely recognized and has numerous awards and grants, including Ghana's Young Pharmacist of the Year. He has awards and grants from Wellcome Trust, Gates Foundation, and many more. And so I would like everyone to join me in welcoming Dr. Bernard Appiah to take us through a presentation and tell us how he manages to do these so innovative things, because we want to get our research out there to both the public, the scientific public and the non-science public, so that there will be good understanding and our research will be translated to knowledge and practice. So take it from here, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for a very generous introduction. I am very, very happy to be here, and hope that by the time we finish, we'll get to know many things beyond the traditional dissemination of studies in journals. So basically, you will get to know a little about me. So I wouldn't say much on the first slide. Now, when we go to the second slide, so basically, I would like to let you know who I am. You have heard a little about me already, so I wouldn't say much. And then we have dissemination. What is it? Then I will give you tips for effectively disseminating research results, mainly about communication aspect, and then provide conclusions and give you opportunities for you to ask questions. So who am I? Well, there are certain things about me you may not find on my CV, and that is what I would like to share with you here. So I happen to be a son of a Gong Bita or town crier from rural Ghana. Then in elementary school, primary school, I became a bellboy. And as a bellboy, I will ring the bell and shout on top of my voice, "It's break time, please. Change lesson, please." And I did this at age 12. And then when I moved, when I went to the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology in Ghana to study pharmacy, I was so much interested in communication that I ended up becoming the editor of the Ghana Pharmaceutical Student Association. And even during that time, as editor, I had to be organizing workshops for my editorial board members and interested students on how to write for a magazine called The Student Pharmacist. And because of that action, in part through that, we were able to publish the second edition of The Student Pharmacist. after the first edition was published in 1961. So the second edition was published in the year 2000. And, that was very, very interesting. I got a chance to publish another magazine again. Then after pharmacy school, I worked as a drug information pharmacist for Ghana's Ministry of Health. Now, as a drug information pharmacist, I used to not only educate healthcare professionals on rational use of medicine, but I also ended up doing programs on radio, television, and also writing for newspapers. So I definitely like to say that I wear multiple hats, although in real life, you ever see me wear hats. I happen to be a pharmacist, science journalist, science and health communication, scholar and practitioner. I also do dissemination implementation science. And of course, my education in itself, I see it as global in the sense that I had my pharmacy education in Ghana, master's in science and technology journalism in the US, master's in development communication from the Philippines, and I had my doctorate also in the US. And so I see myself more as a global person. So I often use communication interventions to address global health issues. And I have a number of projects that I worked on in Ghana. I'm still working on some of them in Ghana, Nigeria, Zambia, and some other places. So I am very excited to share with you aspects that especially relate to communication or dissemination of results. So when we say research dissemination, what do we mean? Now, one of the things we have to know is that it is a planned process. We don't just say, let's go and disseminate the result. We have to plan. But also, we aim to make research accessible to priority audiences. Priority audiences are the very people who are key to making sure that our results become meaningful. And so they could be policymakers, members of the public, they could be media professionals. And also, dissemination, we aim to not only communicate, but also engage. Now, engagement is a bit different from communication in the sense that with engagement, you not only say something, but you also hear from the other side. So it's a two-way approach. And the aim is to ensure that the wider audiences can take up the research that we do. Okay. Now, we know that traditional communication channels like, for example, radio, television, newspapers, of course, social media are very, very key to dissemination of research to wider audiences. But, if we have to use them, what kind of strategies can we use? And so I will be giving you some tips here. So one of the things that we have to do is to create a dissemination strategy or plan before starting our research. Now, if you happen to write grant applications, many funders will require you to have dissemination plans. But the question is, if your study was not funded, what happens? Do you still have to have the dissemination plan? Yes, whether a study is funded or not, there is a need to have a dissemination plan before the study is conducted. And it is so important in the sense that it can actually save us time, but also it can ensure that we can disseminate to wider audiences. Now, oftentimes when even in grant proposals, as a scholar myself, when funders are requiring dissemination plans, people often will include publication in journals, like poster presentations and all those things, but they forget non-traditional sources like, use of social media, use of radio, television, and all those things. And so the goal here is to help you not only become familiar with the aspect that involves scholarly aspect, but scholarly publishing, but you have to be able to know the strategies for disseminating research results to wider audiences. So the second tip is that we should know how to catch, why we should catch priority audiences. Now, we show that priority audiences like policymakers, media, they are not usually the primary target of scholarly papers. In fact, sometimes journalists may want to read articles published in journals to be able to write stories about them. And they often have some difficulty because of the technicality involved. So some journals have a good way of helping journalists by providing what we call press releases or press statements. Those are very, very helpful. But in general, journalists are not, they are not supposed to be reading journals. And so we have to make it possible for them to be able to understand our work. Policymakers also often don't do that unless they are also technical experts themselves. So if we want to benefit, we want our research to benefit priority audiences, we need to go beyond scholarly papers. Oftentimes in Africa, you tell somebody tells you something and then you ask the person, hey, where did you hear that? The question is, they usually respond, I heard it on radio. And that shows how powerful radio as an old communication channel, for example, is still dominant in low and middle-income countries. However, we also know that social media is also being very, very popular, and we can use social media effectively also to disseminate our results. So we have to know why we should catch priorities, because one, they are the beneficiaries of our major research. Funders want to see that the primary or the community members, policymakers, and all the others get to know about the research that we do. And so if we should catch them, it helps in making sure that, say, funders, for example, may want to invest more in the things that we do. If something is good and others are hearing about it. But also, we need to know where to catch the priority audiences. You see, I like fish, but my late mother once told me that my first word as a kid was fish. So sometimes I use fish analogies in my presentations. Now, let's say we want to catch fish, a particular fish. We have to know where that fish is likely to be located, which type of water body the fish is likely to be found. We have to know so many things about, where to find that particular fish. So now let's say, and here I want you to consider the fish as the priority audience, the audience that we want to reach with our research. Okay? So let's say we know the kind of water body place where the audience can be found. Okay, now let's say we know that radio is a popular channel that our audience would like to often listen to. Okay, now what kind of bait can we use to hook the priority audience? So in this case, for the radio, what kind of radio programs can we do to really hook the priority audience? Okay, so again, using radio, you can see that sometimes we have something like drama, we have some like talk shows, so many other programming that radios frequencies often implement. We have to know the type. If it is social media that we want to use, okay, in that case, so the where will become what type of social media are people on, okay? And then in the case of the bait, what kind of programming can we put on social media to attract the audience? So we need to be aware of the different ways of reaching our audiences. Okay, the bait, the thing that can actually hook them. Then we have to also know how to hook the priority audiences. How? Now, the how is more of the process. Okay. So you see, I have given examples of radio and social media. Okay. Now, the diversity comes here in terms of different ways that people may receive information. Now, it is always, I mean, it's a good thing to think broadly. Don't think of only one communication channel. For example, if you do something with rural communities, and I come from a rural area, so I often use rural. I mean, in fact, a lot of my research, I tend to focus on rural communities. You know, if you go and do research about rural communities and it works very well, and you now want to disseminate the results, you want to know the different types of communication channels that those in the rural areas may like. You don't only want to use social media for that. You know, sometimes even traditional gathering where you now talk to people who have gathered face-to-face interactions can be very, very meaningful. So be diverse in terms of your thinking regarding how to reach the people. Sometimes for elderly people, for example, they may want to be reading newspapers, or they may still be listening to radio. For younger folks, they may be on social media. You know, television and all those are also very key here. So you need to know very well the different ways of getting the people and be more diverse in the kind of channels that you want to use if you have money. If you don't have enough money, you need to think about a particular channel or channels that reach a lot more people, okay? Because sometimes, obviously, we are limited by how much engagement we could do. So if you find that a particular channel is more likely to be meaningful in terms of engaging others, use it. Even social media is very broad. Among social media, which of them are your primary, your primary or your priority audiences often using? Then you consider that one. But also, we have to be creative. Okay? Merely telling people about the fact that they have to do something may not be enough. For example, if you have listened to or watched Coca-Cola adverts, if you see that when you are even not thinking of drinking one, as soon as you see the advert, you feel like reaching out for one bottle of Coca-Cola. So you have to be very creative in the messages that you provide. Okay. One way to increase creativity is, for example, package information in the form of like TikTok or even like drama or something like that. That can be very, very cool. Then you also have to think visual. You know, as researchers, oftentimes the results are presented in tables and figures that the members of the public may have a hard time understanding. If we think visual, we may be able to create infographics, for example, or multimedia type of information that will make the audience understand that very well. And then we also need to aid engagement with our audience. If you put something on Facebook and people came to comment on it, be engaging by also commenting back. If you have something on YouTube as a YouTube video and people are making comments, also engage with them. So don't just put out there and then go. You have to be engaging. If you are doing a program on, on radio, it should be done in such a way that you can engage with the audience. So I've done projects that involve like listeners, for example, calling into the radio program to answer questions. They ask questions that people will be in the studio to answer questions. So you need to engage with the audience and encourage participation. But also you need to know when to catch the priority audience. Again, again with fishing, some type of fish, they are seasonal. So when you have to know when to go to a particular body to catch the fish. So there are certain news stories or some result also that can be framed with the timing in mind. And one way to do that, for example, is during the World Celebration Days, like we have World HIV Day or Blood Donor Day or stuff like that. If you have studies or results that resonate with that, that will be a good time because there is already a very good timing for you to now disseminate your result. It will hook to your audience. So know the particular timing and then use that appropriately. And by time, I will also say that oftentimes researchers want to involve media people during the launch or the dissemination of results. That alone is not enough. I think from my experience working with African journalists, I see many of them want to be actively involved in research. So if you engage them from the beginning to the end, it can be very, very helpful. So then when, for example, it's also a situation where for the scientists or for researchers, we want to make sure our result is published in a journal before we disseminate the result, obviously. And so it's a good idea to alert journalists, for example, that, hey, I have this study coming up. It has just been accepted. As soon as, it is with the journal, as soon as it is accepted, I'll get to you. Because for journalists, we are interested also in the newness of something. If something has been published new, it's easier for us to get story out of it than a paper that has been published several years or several months ago. It may not necessarily now be so newsworthy, although we can still find a way to get something out of it. But oftentimes it is very, very helpful if it is fresh, like bread from the oven. I'm sure many of you love a very hot one. So we need those kind of things that will make listeners want to just pay more attention. So timing is very, very important. Yeah. Also, get help from your organization if possible. Now, I know that some organizations, particularly in low and middle income countries, have what we call public relations officers. Okay. These are people who traditionally don't help a lot with research dissemination efforts. They are meant to be as the link between the public and the institutions. But many of these people are trained in communication. So if they are traditionally not helping disseminate the results of your research, it may be a good idea to probably engage them and they can be of help. Now, I also know that oftentimes when people are not doing things that they normally don't do, you go to them, it's like an added responsibility for them. So one way to make it work is if you are writing a grant proposal, for example, and you value dissemination beyond academic audiences, find a little budget within that so that you can support that office to help you disseminate your work beyond the traditional journals. Okay. Now, sometimes these people may not be available. If they are not available, you may want to advocate for one. Now, it's so unfortunate, but I can tell of, I know Africa in terms of this very well. There are a lot of people who are trained in communication and they don't have work to do. A lot of our journalists, they are not only trained in the journalistic principles, but they are trained in communication. So scientific institutions should find ways of having those people be more involved in the kind of research they do. And that can be very, very helpful. Prepare for traditional and social media interviews. Now, if a journalist asks, I want to get something from you, from your research, yeah, you need to know the deadline because the media, they often work with deadlines. But also you want to know the focus of the story and who else will likely be involved or be interviewed. Now, I would say that if you are to be interviewed on TV, or if your interview is going to be more like an audio visual, you have to know the studio characteristics. For example, I know someone who was invited for a talk on TV, and when he got there, he was turned away because the kind of shirt he was wearing was going to, it wasn't going to align well with the background of the studio. Okay, so if it's a program that you often watch, you may know the kind of color which is there. So when you are dressing up, you dress in a way that fits that very well. So be mindful of what they have, and if you don't know, you want to ask them. So what is the kind of color? What's the color of your studio? If I am to put on a shirt, what kind of color would be more useful or may not be helpful? So you want to know all those things. And as you also prepare for the interviews, you want to know a little about the background of the person who is going to interview you and expect. Sometimes some of the questions may be off, but hey, you have to be prepared for them. Now, you have to now develop a single overriding head communication objective that could serve as sound bites. So if you have to be engaged in a way, and I also say that, like, sometimes you have people with social media channels occasionally bringing experts to talk with them. And those people have a lot of followers. So whenever you are going to these people, just like a traditional media, you need to be aware of that. But then when you get there, before you even get there, you need to know about the most important thing about your research that you want the people to understand or to get. That is very important. And often it is not easy because if you do a study, you may have a lot of results. What is important here is to consider which ones are the key, so that is the one that you're going to focus on. And then you have to think about doing it in such a way that members of the public or people who are not an expert or who are not experts in your field can understand. So you have to speak in non-technical language, okay? Now it is time to ditch big English. Growing up, I was made to know that, yeah, if you can speak big words, then, if you use some English words that are not very, very common, it means that, yeah, you are the great guy. So there is this funny thing about someone who wanted to show off by saying that, hey, I am notorious. He wanted to say that he was famous, but he used the word notorious, not knowing that notorious is being famous for doing something bad, So you don't have to use big words to describe your research. Consider using very, very simple words. Okay. And then time to think about your audience more. Will they understand the terms? In fact, those times when I used to do a program on TV in Ghana, educating people on how to use medicines correctly, sometimes I'll pass by someone who is a member of the public, and then I will say, hey, if I go on TV, this is what I'm going to say. What do you think about it? Sometimes the person may say, this may be hard, okay, yeah, this is okay. So you have to practice it before you go. I can tell you that if you don't plan very well, it can be very challenging. And especially in contexts that involve speaking in the local language. I tell you, if you don't prepare beforehand, and you're now going to think about the local language you use in the studio or at the time of the interview, it is going to be a big challenge for you. So these are things that will require that you think beforehand before you go ahead and do that. And then you also have to avoid acronyms. Acronyms are very, very commonly used. Sometimes as peers speak, they just use it. You have to be very, very careful because not many people may understand the particular acronym that you would like to highlight. Yeah. Now, when you are asked to answer questions, also you have to answer questions well. There's a tendency for a yes or a no kind of answer and just leave it. If the question was asked and it requires a yes answer, even after saying yes, you can add a few more things to clarify it. If you said no, you can, sometimes it's just the way people ask questions, but you can help your audiences by providing key information that may be very helpful. Now, the tip 12 here is you have to use the inverted pyramid approach. Now, what is the inverted pyramid? So the inverted pyramid here is the opposite of the typical convention in scientific writing. So normally, when a study is published, we have the introduction, which discusses the rationale for the research, method, what was done, result, what was found, and then also discussion, okay? So this is how it looks. Now, when you invert the pyramid, that means you turn it upside down. So here, you have the most important information first. Other details may come, and then the general information. Okay. So if you picture that, in fact, even if they give you 1 minute to say something about your research, you can find the time to do it. You know, so oftentimes people will complain, oh, I don't have much time and all that. No, if you plan very well, you should be able to find time. Think about elevator pitch, for example, where you are in an elevator with somebody, the person may just get off within a few floors, but within that short time, you have to sell your research to the person. You have to, at that point, think about the most important information first before the other things come. Okay. The inverted pyramid approach is very key because non-scientists or non-experts such as media professionals and policymakers like the so what approach. You know, okay, so your study found result A, B, and C. So the question is, so what? Why should they care about your study? Okay, one of the things that it becomes useful here is the time factor, because non-scientists don't have much time. Okay, policymakers don't have much time. So you need to be very, very careful in selecting the kind of result you want to share. Sometimes in a study, you have so many results. Which ones are key? You know, which ones should you prioritize? You know, so you need to be able to have that in mind so that as you disseminate your results, they would understand that very well, and then you can provide a better context for subsequent actions. So how do you buy into the inverted pyramid approach? Again, you need to be more interested in the most important findings of your research and why people should care about the results. Okay, you don't have to focus too much on the rationale and the methods unless the output is mainly focused on the rationale and the methods. So sometimes I tell people that if you want to reduce any word count in a particular abstract or in a particular paper, the introduction part where you have so many things is where sometimes you can remove some things. It's kind of like when you are flying a lot and you realize that your baggage is full, is beyond the typical weight. An easier way is to check if you are somebody in academia is whether you have books in the, of course, in the bag, in the luggage, or also shoes. Those ones, if you remove, you realize that you can easily fit very well. So in the same way, oftentimes, if you want to cut down on too many things from a manuscript, it is the introductory part that often requires many things. So don't dwell too much on that aspect when you are being interviewed, unless the interview is actually focusing on why you did the study and the kind of method that you use. But if they are interested in the findings, go straight to the findings and say, hey, we found this, and this is what it means. You know, but by the way, before we got the results, this is what we did. You know, then that becomes very, very meaningful. So what are the benefits of the public getting exposed to your, of course, I mean, the benefit of using traditional and social media to disseminate results? Members of the public will get exposed to your research. And for funders, that is very, very important because it is something that they want the public to become aware of. Now, peers or other researchers get exposed to your research. Why? Because Your peers will not only read journal articles, just like other members of the public, they also listen to news. They also watch social media things. And so if I watch a particular TV channel and I get to know, oh, this study is showing that, I will look it up, and eventually when I'm doing a study that is relevant to that study, I would end up citing it. So studies have been done to show that research that often gets media attention are more likely to be cited than those that do not get media attention. So you want to make sure that you can use you should consider using non-traditional outlets to disseminate your results. But also policymakers and practitioners would become aware of your research, and they then will not want to invest in the research, because members of the public can go to them and say, hey, have you heard that this particular intervention even is very good for this particular condition? This is what the news, I just got to know this through something on social media or through news channel or something like that, and that can lead to potential uptake of your research. But also it can check the box for most, if not all funders, because funders want to ensure that you disseminate your results beyond the traditional research community. So I would say that using traditional social media definitely requires an approach usually different from disseminating research via journals. One key approach here is to ensure that you do use what we call the inverted pyramid, where you focus more on the key findings before going further in the other details. But also, I want you to know the tips and use these tips appropriately. I would also like to say that if done very, very well, you could end up getting a lot of benefits from your research. One of the things that often sometimes we don't realize is if you are a scholar and you get media attention of the kind of work that you do, it is also sometimes very good in the sense that sometimes it helps show the impact of your work. In fact, for scholars in high-income countries like the UK, the United States, when faculty members are going up for tenure, for example, they are expected to show the impact they are making. And sometimes the impact can be shown through media attention. Okay, so you have to know that there could be some benefits. There are also some benefits even beyond that. I remember in Ghana, I used to do a program on TV, educating people on how to use medicines, and my friends would ask me, "Hey, are these people paying you for that?" And I was like, "No, I was just doing it." He said, "No, you have to get something." But life sometimes is not just about getting the physical cash. Do you know that I used that TV program to attend a conference in Sweden, and I got a scholarship to go to that conference. I attended the conference for free. At that conference, a major funder, after seeing my presentation, said, "Hey, I think that you may be able to review grant for us. Would you want to consider reviewing grant applications for us?" And I said, "Yeah, why not? Yeah, I'll be interested." And so gave me some grant application. I started reviewing for them. Guess what? As I reviewed for them, I also ended up applying to them, and I've been getting grants from them, So you see, just disseminating something outside of the traditional channel led to me, first of all, going to Sweden for a conference, and then getting exposed to a big funder, and then in the end, becoming a reviewer for them, and also securing grant from them. So you can see the kind of benefit. Of course, yours may not necessarily be like mine, but benefit could come in different ways. So I think it is something worth considering because they can be very, very helpful. I want to thank you so much for the opportunity, and we'll be very happy to answer questions that you may have. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you. Yeah.
Can you still hear me?
I can hear you. I heard.
Okay.
Thank
Can
you.
you hear
Yeah.
me now?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I can stop
Thank
my.
you so much.
You're
Thank
welcome.
you so much.
You're welcome.
I have one very nagging question here.
Okay.
So we're talking about disseminating the results of our research. What if the results of your research is negative? What do you do?
Okay. Thank you so much.
Are you allowed to disseminate the research results that are negative?
Thank you so much. Yes. So negative research. The thing is here. First of all, for negative research, it has to go through some hurdles. Sometimes publishing it in a journal may be difficult. Sometimes, but when it is finally published in a journal, peer-reviewed journal, it means that it's already disseminated to the scholarly community, right?
Yes.
In that case, certainly it is also worth disseminating it to the audience, because if, let's say, an intervention is being used over time, and now your result shows that, you know, the intervention is no more useful. I mean, yeah, it's a negative one in a way, but you still have to let the audience, people become aware. Or maybe you did a study and there was no difference in the strategies being used. It was not something you were expecting. You expected a difference between the intervention and the control, right?
Yeah.
But then your study showed that the intervention was sometimes even worse than the control. You have to do it, but of course, research is not something that, like, once a particular study is published, that is it. Was there a problem with the way the study was conducted? So that would definitely call for more research. So one study cannot necessarily be used to stop what is being done, unless it is so rigorous in a way that there is an absolute certainty that the findings that came out were the result of the study, of the intervention, and not other things. So oftentimes, when you are communicating those, you need to also caution people that this is just one study. We did it among, this is what we found, and that more studies are needed to either, confirm or, to discard, some of these. So yeah, you have to do your best to share it, but don't also take the science aspect. If it was not, if the type of study is also very, very important. The type of study, yeah. So if you just did a very, like, convenient sample of people and you found some differences that you didn't expect, it's difficult to make a case for an intervention that is already being used, that they should stop it because of a study you have done, which maybe may not have been very, very rigorous. So you have to consider that aspect very well. Yeah.
Okay. Then this is a follow-up question. So don't you think that if I am trying to communicate my research results, that I may ultimately bias the results by presenting it in a manner that is not completely true, embellish it and all that? Isn't there a danger that the researcher can bias their results when they are trying to disseminate it? And by communicating it in maybe through social media and other non-traditional means.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. It's also a good question. So, the framing, the way we frame messages always have implications. Okay. Sometimes, depending on how you frame it, it may be viewed as you being biased or, something like that. But for as long as the framing, the information we are giving out there is accurate. Okay, it may not be biased because this is something that has already been published in a journal. So whether you disseminate it out there for the non-scientists or not, scientists are going to get about it. So it is our duty to let the public know about it. Sometimes it may look as if we are promoting our work so much and so we are just putting it out there. No, I mean, we have done a study, we have found that, using radio drama encourages more childhood vaccination, right?
Yes.
So you just put it out there on social media. Hey, check out, our new study has shown that people who listen to our radio drama ended up vaccinating their kids more than those who did not listen to it. Yeah, this one, it is accurate. It's a fact. So you can put it out there. But sometimes people can spin off a study that didn't look at a particular area and then they will just make it go in that direction. That I will not say because, if you're going to say something that if somebody eventually was able to read the full paper, it's going to be different from what you have said, then please don't say it. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so there's a question from Bartholomew on the Q&A, and he's saying, how do you manage the challenge of getting approvals for media dissemination, especially if the research is sponsored and your donor is not keen about you disseminating the research outside the academic community?
Yeah, very, very interesting. In fact, I am involved in one actually. The funder initially I could see was not very, very keen on going out there to disseminate things outside the traditional thing. But what is important here is what is established is that as long as a study has been peer reviewed and published, okay? If it is published, then obviously the funder cannot stop you from disseminating it. Sometimes also I've heard of a situation where a private company funded a study that the result was not very good for that company. So in the end, that result didn't get even disseminated. And they didn't disseminate the result even through a journal. Because which is not a very good thing because it's not very good. But I can tell you that most funders are even very happy to see their study disseminated in other channels, because that is also a way of showing to the members of the public that they are actually doing something. Oftentimes you may even mention their name as those who funded you, so in many instances, the funders are key. But in instances where there are doubts, as long as the study has been published in a peer-reviewed journal, you can go beyond that and disseminate the results.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Martin is asking two questions. He says, how do we engage journalists regularly? That's the first question. And then also, how can one be a science columnist?
Okay. Thank you. So, thank you. These are great questions. No, journalists, for them, information is their tool. It's the food on which they rely. So journalists want more information. So if you want to engage with journalists, regularly, it is a good idea to involve them earlier on. Even at the time of proposal writing, you can have one say, hey, we have this particular proposal that we want to do this project. If we get funded, I would like to get you to come and help us in disseminating aspect of it. So let them know ahead. And once you get it, also honor your word. But sometimes you realize that journalists may come for programs and they are even turned away because the scientists didn't want them there in the first place. I think there has to be more of an effort, like there has to be some active effort from researchers and also from journalists, because oftentimes the journalists who want to have information who contact the researcher, but the researcher can also reach out to the journalists as well. And also in the research community, there is that perception that if you are so media friendly, then you are practicing quack science or something like that. And sometimes it doesn't help. However, as long as you are able to build that relationship with key journalists, and I think you may want to do that with the radio. For example, the media house is doing that is a great thing, but also working with the media association. We have like Association of Science Journalists, or if you're able to get in touch with those kind of people, their members have a lot of interest in certain aspects. So today you are working on climate change. Another time it's going to be something on diabetes, health. They will be very much interested in it. So I think there has to be a way of cultivating a relationship. There has to be an active, be very intentional about it, and don't make it a one way. If a journalist attends a particular media launch or of an event, try and get their number and follow them up. But also one of the things that we don't want to do is when a journalist writes a story about your work and it is good, also praise them, thank them. Don't only get back to them when they write something which is not good. So there's that kind of effort. You have to make effort to do that. And then in terms of so you said the first one was about regularly, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The other is about being a science columnist.
Yeah, columnist. Yeah. So
how does he become one?
Yes. So there are opportunities for you to do that. One way is to get involved in some kind of workshops like this, where you get to know how to. I mean, like this, a webinar is a short one, but there are some information out there also online where you learn how to communicate to a broader audience. If you're able to do that, then you have to reach out to particular media houses, and then they may be willing to do that. Because sometimes for columnists, yes, I mean, some media houses definitely will want them, but you also have to read more about what other people have been writing and know about their style. And then once you have an idea, find out who the editor of that institution is and say, hey, yeah, I have this thing that I would like to I would like you to consider, is it okay for me to share with you? So before you send your first draft, for example, to them, make sure you have known their style so that when the editor gets it, they wouldn't have a lot of issues with it. Okay. And if you do that well, they can help you. In fact, I used to write for the Weekly Spectator. It's a media house, like a newspaper in Ghana, weekly basis, educating people on rational use of medicines. And I got to know one of the journalists through a workshop that we attended together, and I made the person know, hey, I'm interested in this. I was editor of Ghana Pharmaceutical Association. I like writing. And so I wrote the first one, and he liked it. So if you have a particular media in mind, get to know how their columns are written, and then do your best to sell yourself in the first time manner in a very, very good way. Okay, so once you do that, you are likely to be successful. Yeah.
Okay, so Obianuju is asking a question. She says, please, are there ethical considerations to consider when communicating research that impacts sensitive populations or public health?
Yes. So there are some ethical issues. Yeah, there are. For example, like there are some things that journalists know, like you don't want to show faces of people, and depending on the result, say you have not yet communicated the result to the audience that where you got your study, it's not very good. Oftentimes, public health people, community members don't like us because we go to communities, collect data from them, and then when we get the result, we don't go back to them and tell them about it. And then they will be hearing it from other places. So I think it's a good idea to first engage with communities where you got the result from. And then once you have that, you can also do it elsewhere. But in terms of communication also, there are certain things that you want to avoid, and that is being very like providing names. Like when we're getting ethics approval, we often say that the names of the people interviewed would not be included, right? Those are things that we know we have to keep, but it doesn't have to be only through journals. Even when you are communicating the listener, you can, if it's something about a group that is traditionally marginalized, you can provide it more as a general information than providing specifics. But also there are some studies that when you do, the nature of the studies is such that people may be able to glean through and know who you are talking about, and that you have to be very careful, especially qualitative studies that are very, very few in number, and the demographics are not easy to, it's very, very easy for one to get the people who may have been interviewed for that. But in general, I think that the ethics of publishing, which is the fact that, yes, you don't say things that are not true, and all those things also apply here. Sometimes when we are discussing our result, we can go beyond even the results itself and make it look like that was the result of the study. But that can be also unethical to do that. You have to provide accurate information. Yeah.
Okay. So two more. We're almost at the top of the hour. So two more. Mohammed is asking that can you provide some tips on how to do a captivating poster for a conference? So what he's asking is, are there apps that he can lay his hands on to create posters for conference abstracts? And the one that comes at the top of my mind is Canva. So Canva is a very good one for making conference abstract posters for conferences. Do you know of any other?
Yeah, so sometimes some conferences may have some templates, right?
Okay.
They may have their own templates that will help you navigate the creation of the poster. So that is one thing to consider. But also, in general, if you are using posters, you don't want to be considering like upper cases, capital letters as, those ones, it's like you are shouting at your reader. When you have a lot of capital, like some people will write the what do you call it? The topic of the poster in capital letters. Sometimes it doesn't look so good. Also, try to ensure you have enough space, more spaces, and then depending on how you arrange it, sometimes if it is vertical or horizontal, if it's too long, you don't have to keep reading to the right, to the left, it becomes, so there are some basic things that you can do about posters to make it more concise. Oftentimes also, if you can get the kind of results that are appealing to the eye. Say you have some result that we have percentages, for example. Yeah, you can rearrange the percentages in a manner such that it can be like straight from the smallest to the largest or largest to the smallest, so that it's appealing to the eye, So some of those things are key, but oftentimes there are tools you can use to create some visuals to aid your poster. But in general, the communication has to be said that it is very clear and it's appealing to the eye. You can also include contact information in case somebody needs additional information. A person can call you for that. Yeah.
Okay. So Yemi is asking a question that to what extent is dissemination through the non-traditional channels recognized and counted towards tenure evaluation or promotion in general?
Thank you so much. I think it depends. I know from my experience in the high-income country in the US, it is very, very key. It's showing that your impact is being felt beyond academia. Now, talking with colleagues also who work in low and middle-income countries, it doesn't seem like something that is highly, highly valued. However, things are changing now. And so providing that additional information is seen as valuable to a particular institution's outlook to the public. So I think I would say that even in lower middle income countries, yeah, it's not to the level of acceptance in high-income countries, but I would say that, yes, it is better than before. Before, those ones were not considered that much, but now, I mean, with uptake of research and dissemination being, I mean, public engagement being important, those are also being considered. Yeah, so just find out about the criteria your institution uses, those who have gone through it recently, and they can give you accurate information as to the value they attach to that. Yeah.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one last question now from Nuraini. He's saying that in a case where funding was provided for research, the research was carried out, the results were disseminated, probably by non-traditional methods of dissemination. How can you now measure the long-term impact of those research findings after using those dissemination methods? Are there ways you can measure the long-term impact?
Yeah, so there are ways of measuring impact of dissemination. In fact, dissemination without evaluation is not good. So it is always good to know about your dissemination efforts. So yeah, and it may not only be the long term. Sometimes you may even get a short term and share it with the funder. So you have to be very, very strategic. Say, for example, if you are disseminating something through YouTube, right?
Yeah.
YouTube, you can check the number of views, comments, and all those ones. And if more people are talking about it, yeah, it means it's something. You know, so that is an immediate one. But also it depends on how widely it is shared. If sometimes you put it on somewhere, now it's getting even discussed on radio or on television, then it means you are really making impact. So I think it is not a good idea to just throw something out there to the non-traditional media and leave it just like that. From time to time, look at it. If people are not viewing it, is it a problem with the way it was done? Or, you know, you need to have multiple outlets to share some of these things. You know, so you need to, you definitely need to consider. But I will also say that dissemination research is also, I mean, dissemination itself too is also a form of research. You know, we have implementation science, but we also have dissemination science, and there is a rigorous way of doing that. If it's just the communication of your result out there, is different than now trying to cause cascade down the line where you now want to see which channel is better than the other, and all those things. You have to plan accordingly and then evaluate effectively. So I think that it's a good idea to always consider whether the effort you are making is making people become aware of your intervention or your study. So don't just communicate out there, but look to see whether since communication, there has been any changes to what is happening, and then use that to make a case for additional funding if possible.
Thank you so much, sir. So at this point, I'd like to invite our director of the Ivan Research Institute, Nigeria, Professor Echezona Ezanolu, to say a few words. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Appiah. Thank you very much for honoring our invitation to present at this meeting. I just wanted to use the opportunity to let anyone know that we are putting together the topics for 2026. So that will be our monthly webinars every first of the month for 2026. So if you do want a topic, this is the time that we get everyone that have been part of this to weigh in on things they would like to hear about. So please send it to the email on the chat to say, I would like to be there. If you have a special guest that you want us to invite also to speak on a specific topic, we will reach out those persons once we consider those. So by the December, we are hoping that we will have that list for 2026 out for you so that you can plan your calendar for 2026 and then be able to block these first Mondays to join us together. We will also would like to send out an evaluation for you towards the end of the year with the topics that have been discussed, the 12 topics that have been done for each of the month of the year. and for you to weigh in what you thought about those evaluations. And this is to let us know things to bring back, things to begin, because the whole idea is to bring individuals who are experts in some topics that are not always covered. In the science communication, to me, is a huge when you see people. Yesterday I was having a discussion with Professor Nyeka actually, and we're looking at one of the doctors on TikTok who was very popular. People think of him as a comedian, but if you look at him, he didn't do any residency. He's not a professor, but all he was using was the science of communication. It was really the skills that you could see him break down a topic and be able to communicate it with the audience in TikTok. And people always think that the best place is when you're teaching at university, professor, but it's a skill also that you can acquire, and then you can use that in so many different ways. So thank you so much, Dr. Appiah, for joining us this. And thank you, Professor Nyeka, for an excellent driving this idea of every month for us to bring in a new speaker to deal with that. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining. We'll see you this first Monday of every month. We have a fantastic topic for you. We'll see you next month. Stay well, be blessed, and bye-bye. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much.